On January 9, 1493, Christopher Columbus, sailing near the coast of Hispaniola, recorded an encounter with 3 mermaids in his ship log. He noted that they rose high out of the sea, but he was not impressed. He wrote that they were not as beautiful as they were depicted in legend, for their faces had somewhat masculine features. This entry is the case's most resistant point. Columbus was a seasoned navigator documenting a real observation, yet what he described and what the myth demands clash violently. He saw something in the water. The biological reality of that sighting, however, fractures the very legend it was supposed to support. This fracture is where the facts stop making clean sense, opening a gap between a documented historical event and the impossible biology required to fulfill it. To understand that gap, we have to look at the sheer scale of the myth itself. The mermaid is not a localized legend, she is a global archetype. In ancient Assyria, around 1000 BCE, the goddess Atargat is transformed into a fish, retaining only her human upper body. In West Africa, the water spirit Mami Wata appears with the same hybrid form, a motif that predates European contact. The indigenous peoples of the Americas documented similar entities, from the Ipupiara of Brazil to the half-fish people of the Pacific Northwest. In Scotland, they are the Selkies, in Greece, the Sirens. The stakes of this convergence are high. If these cultures had no contact, how did they independently invent the exact same creature? The answer requires examining what the evidence actually establishes, separating the mechanics of human perception from the appeal of a hidden biological reality. Before building any narrative, we have to define the weight of the evidence available to us, because not all claims carry equal authority. Tier 1 evidence consists of physical remains, forensic records, and contemporaneous documents. In this case, that includes the written logs of explorers like Columbus and Henry Hudson, the ancient textual records of civilizations like Assyria, and the catalogued biological remains of real marine mammals. Tier 2 is corroborated testimony, which includes the centuries of independent sailor accounts that describe similar encounters, and the anthropological records of global myths that confirm the geographic spread of the belief without requiring the creature to be real. Tier 3 comprises single-source claims, such as an isolated sighting by one individual with no corroborating witnesses, which must be used with explicit caution. Then there is what is not evidence, internet hoaxes, the assertions of modern conspiracy theorists, and the complete absence of a physical mermaid specimen. 2 logical rules govern this landscape. First, correlation does not equal causation. The fact that isolated cultures drew half-human, half-fish entities does not automatically mean such entities existed. We need a causal mechanism for the shared myth. Second, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, but it does strictly limit what we can claim to know. Within this landscape, 2 specific anomalies emerged that the official biological record struggles to account for. The first is morphological specificity. It is not simply that isolated cultures invented water monsters, it is that they independently converged on the exact same hybrid, human from the waist up, fish from the waist down. The second anomaly is geographic consistency among isolated landlocked cultures. Societies with no maritime tradition and no exposure to large aquatic mammals still arrived at the same basic template, projecting the same hybrid form onto local rivers and lakes. For any explanation to hold, it must address these 2 anomalies without relying on the existence of an undocumented aquatic hominid. What the evidence establishes from Tier 1 and corroborated Tier 2 sources is entirely cultural and biological, not cryptozoological. The evidence establishes that the myth of the human-fish hybrid is ancient, geographically universal, and persistent. The evidence also establishes that early modern sailors definitively encountered real marine mammals they misidentified as mermaids. What the evidence does not establish is the existence of a single undiscovered species matching the mythological description, nor does it establish any institutional cover-up to hide such a creature. This is the ground truth every explanation must account for. The documented narrative of the mermaid unfolds chronologically through human perception. The earliest written record comes from Assyria, where a targetess accidentally killed her mortal lover and, overwhelmed by shame, threw herself into a lake. The text states that the waters refused to conceal her divine beauty, transforming her lower half into a fish. What followed is reconstructed from anthropological data, not contemporaneous records. As human civilizations expanded along coastlines and major waterways, the archetype of the water deity took hold. By the time of the great European explorers, the myth was fully ingrained in the maritime consciousness. When Henry Hudson sighted a mermaid near Nova Scotia in 1608, his log described an animal with the skin of a mackerel and a man-like upper body. This was a real observation, reconstructed from the reality of a sailor's life, months at sea, poor nutrition, and the profound psychological effects of isolation. The narrative took a sharp turn in the 19th century. As the fields of marine biology and taxonomy advanced, sightings dropped to zero. The mythology was relegated to folklore, until 2012, when the narrative was artificially resurrected. The Animal Planet Network aired a documentary-style program that used actors, CGI, and a fabricated narrative about a NOAA scientist finding a mermaid body. This was explicitly a work of speculative fiction, but a significant portion of the viewing public took it as a leaked whistleblower account. When NOAA issued a standard denial stating that no such evidence had ever been found, the denial itself was seized upon as proof of a cover-up. The official record, as maintained by biologists and anthropologists, concludes that mermaids are entirely mythological. The strongest evidence supporting this is the complete absence of a physical specimen in the fossil record or in any biological catalog, contrasted with the absolute certainty of what sailors actually saw. When Columbus wrote that his mermaids were not beautiful and had masculine faces, he was looking at Antillean manatees. When Hudson described a creature with a mackerel's tail and a man's torso, the morphological description perfectly matches a seal or a manatee surfacing vertically in the water. The official explanation holds perfectly for the age of exploration. It accounts for the sightings by anchoring them in documented marine biology and the limits of human perception at sea. However, it leaves our two anomalies partially unaddressed. It does not fully explain why the specific human-fish hybrid template preceded these maritime misidentifications by millennia, nor why isolated landlocked cultures shared the same foundational imagery without access to the large marine mammals that fooled oceanic sailors. This brings us to the competing explanations, beginning with the simplest one that requires the fewest assumptions. The simplest explanation is universal cognitive templating combined with animism. Humans universally recognize the human form as the baseline for understanding the world. When ancient cultures confronted the vast, unknowable depths of the ocean, they populated it with beings they could understand by projecting the human form onto local aquatic life. Coastal cultures projected humans onto fish, landlocked cultures projected humans onto local river species. This explains both the morphological specificity and the landlocked consistency. The hybrid is simply the collision of the known self and the unknown water. It requires no undiscovered species, only the documented psychology of human mythmaking. The most prominent alternative is the aquatic ape theory, which suggests that human ancestors went through a semi-aquatic evolutionary phase. Proponents argue this phase explains human traits like bipedalism, subcutaneous fat, and the loss of body fur. The theory posits that if such a phase occurred, it could have left a residual cultural memory, manifesting globally as the mermaid myth. Some proponents extend this to suggest that a branch of this aquatic hominid survived into the modern era, hidden in the deep ocean, and that governments are actively concealing their existence. This is where you must weigh the appeal of a hidden evolutionary branch against the total absence of its physical trace. The aquatic ape theory is burdened by a fatal lack of Tier 1 evidence. The fossil record demonstrates a clear, terrestrial lineage for human ancestors. There are no transitional aquatic hominid fossils. Furthermore, human physiology contradicts a semi-aquatic past. We breathe involuntarily, we lack the ability to drink salt water, and our infants cannot swim at birth, unlike every true semi-aquatic mammal. The cover-up variant fails even more decisively. The primary evidence cited for a cover-up is NOAA's 2012 denial of mermaids. However, that denial was a routine response to public confusion generated by a television mockumentary. A government agency correcting public misinformation is standard procedure, not proof of a conspiracy. An absence of bodies is not evidence of a cover-up, it is evidence of an absence of bodies. The open questions surrounding this subject do not revolve around whether an aquatic hominid exists, but rather why the human mind requires the deep water to be populated with human reflections. What type of evidence would resolve the remaining anomalies? A comprehensive mapping of ancient human migration and proto-cultural exchange might reveal a shared origin point for the water spirit archetype, explaining the geographic consistency without requiring independent invention. The reason this evidence does not currently exist is the impermanence of prehistoric cultural records. We cannot excavate the oral traditions of our nomadic ancestors. This creates a genuine, permanent unresolvability regarding the exact origin of the myth's specific morphology. We can establish the psychology that sustains it, but the precise moment the first human looked into the water and imagined a human tail beneath the surface is lost to time. The mermaid endures not because science is hiding her, but because the water remains the last great unknown, and the mind still demands that the unknown look back.